It's not every day that you get to sit on a panel with people you consider your political mentors. And it's not every day that you get to be in a room full of people who have committed their life to the struggle for social and economic justice, for the struggle to abolish prisons, and for the struggle for a free Palestine. So first of all, thank you very much, Gina and Angela, for being with us, and thanks to all of you for coming. We organized this event in 4 weeks, and I have never seen people so excited about an event. We sold out all the tickets within 1 day. So that's to all of you for actually buying those tickets so quickly. Having learned much of my politics, however, from the likes of Angela Davis and Gina, I want to start with our location here at SOAS, where there is currently an injunction against occupational protests for 6 months, following the inspiring organizing by the Justice for Cleaners campaign and the more recent Cops Off Campus network. So to the cleaners at SOAS who are fighting for a decent living wage, the students fighting for their right to protest on this campus and against the privatization of education, and the academic staff, academic and non-academic staff at this university that are fighting against a 13% pay cut, thank you for welcoming us to your community tonight. And we hope... And I just want to say one small thing that might make Angela smile. There was a book blockade outside the gates when the cops were coming on campus, and one of the books that the students filled was Are Prisons Obsolete? And there's a beautiful picture of it. So on Palestine, and I don't get to say this very often, so I want to be excited as I say it, this was actually a great week for Justice for Palestine campaigners. The Brother Plan, aimed at ethnically cleansing up to 70,000 Palestinian Bedouin from the Naqab Desert, was defeated, for now. After mass protests across historic Palestine and internationally, the apartheid Israeli state is not going ahead with that plan. This week, the UK government belatedly issued guidance warning businesses against trade with Israel's illegal settlements. The Romanian government refused to allow its workers to build illegal settlements in the West Bank, and a Dutch water company, that I can't pronounce its name, decided to terminate its relationship with an Israeli water company. And this is besides all the very exciting work that's happening at the academic boycott level and the divestment level in the United States. This is all thanks to the very hard work of boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaigners all around the world that these results are happening. And although these are small steps in our project, they are nonetheless very important steps towards freedom, justice, and equality in our part of the world. None of these positions go far enough in holding Israel fully accountable. However, it is so critical that boycotts, divestments, and sanctions are finally starting to reach the mainstream. And really, we are a pretty young movement if you compare us to the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa and how long that took to catch on. If anyone is unfamiliar with the boycott, divestments, and sanctions campaign, let me just quickly recap. In 2005, Palestinian civil society launched a call calling on the world to implement boycotts, divestments, and sanctions until Israel complies with international law. The 3 demands of the call are an end to the occupation and a dismantling of the apartheid wall, full equality for Palestinian citizens of Israel, and finally, and I would argue most importantly, being a Palestinian refugee myself, the right of return to Palestinian refugees to our homes and lands from which we were ethnically cleansed in 1948, plus reparations for the years of suffering we have had to endure at the hands of the Israeli state. War on Want comes to this work around G4S through our commitment to the BDS campaign, but also through our work on private military and security companies that are unregulated, unheld, unaccountable. Private military and security companies became really important around the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. G4S is today the world's largest private military and security company. In 2011, Palestinian political prisoner organizations specifically called for a BDS campaign against G4S for its complicity in Israel's prison system. In 2007, G4S signed a contract with Israel's prison authority to provide security and surveillance equipment to Israel's prisons and detention facilities. Palestinians from the occupied Palestinian territories are currently held in a total of 4 interrogation centers. You can also call them torture centers, 4 military centers, and approximately 17 prisons. While the 4 military interrogation centers are located inside the occupied Palestinian territories of 1967, all the interrogation centers and prisons, except for one, Aufar, are located within 1948 borders of Israel. This is, of course, in contravention of international law and Geneva Conventions. The location of these prisons inside of Israel means that they are transferring detainees from the occupied territories outside, and this is, of course, illegal according to Article 76 of the 4th Geneva Convention. But I don't want to confine the struggle for Palestinian prisoners simply to the basics of international law, because at its core, the prison experience for Palestinians is a political and social experience of resistance. As Brenna mentioned earlier, in the case for Palestine, we are actually speaking of prisons within open-air prisons, where the entire occupied territories have become transformed into Israel's testing ground for its latest military aggression and racialized surveillance technologies. This week, War on Want launched the report Killer Drones to highlight Israel's leading role around the world in the export of this technology. Of course, they are testing this technology on Palestinians of the Gaza Strip and then marketing it around the world using words like field-tested and combat-proven, meaning that it's used on the bodies of Palestinians to then be marketed here. And currently, the UK government has a contract with a joint venture with an Israeli company for 54 drones called the Watchkeeper Drone. This is going to be a surveillance drone. So the technologies that Israel is practicing on the Palestinians are very quickly making it to the rest of the world. Because as we know, racism against one population is rarely ever confined to the borders or lack thereof of a state like Israel. So please do look at that report and do take the e-action we have online on our website. The prison experience in Palestine is part and parcel of the apartheid nature of the Israeli state and not separate from Israel's history as a settler colonial state. As with all settler colonies, the prison system is established as a punishment for current resistance and a deterrent for any future forms of resistance. Since 1967, Israel has imprisoned 800,000 Palestinians. And here we are speaking just from the Palestinian occupied territories of 1967. 800,000 Palestinians have gone through Israel's prison system. Today, there is a total of 4,996 prisoners. The process of intimidation begins right at the arrest stage, where most Palestinian prisoners will tell you stories of being beaten right at the moment they get of arrest. And this torture continues for several days continuously. But it also moves through the stages of imprisonment and through Israel's military courts, i.e. their kangaroo courts, where most Palestinians are then charged to the maximum limits. But again, as with all forms of repression, the Israeli prison system generates resistance from within its own confines. The Palestinian prisoner movement tended to lead the Palestinian struggle for freedom, for justice, and for equality from inside Israel's prisons. But most importantly, the main lesson to draw from the Palestinian prisoners movement is the effectiveness of mass collective action. Every single gain of the Palestinian prisoner movement has come from them working collectively. The hunger strikes of the 1960s and the 1970s were simply put forward because they were asking and demanding beds. But because they worked collectively and there was a mass hunger strike, they were able to achieve it. In the 80s, the big struggle for Palestinian prisoners was around education and education rights. And again, with mass collective struggle, they were able to achieve it. In the past couple of years, as most of you know, most of the hunger strikes have happened around the issue of administrative detention, which is being held without trial for a period of 6 months that is renewable without evidence, without your lawyer or you knowing the evidence that's being used against you. One of the most basic and simple demands on some of the latest hunger strikes has also been the demand to see family members, because prisoners from the Gaza Strip have not been able to see their families since the siege began. And although I started by saying this has been a very good week for campaigners for Palestinian justice, let us not forget that as we're speaking today, in below zero temperatures, the Gaza Strip has no electricity and is still under Israel's siege. Now, the reason I mention collective struggle and this idea of being able to see families is that G4S has a very particular role to play in this. When we say G4S is supplying equipment to Israel, it's actually supplying the surveillance equipment and the glass that is keeping Palestinian prisoners from being able to touch, see, or feel their families. This is the role of G4S in breaking that collective action and breaking the spirit of Palestinian prisoners. It's not simply that, oh, they're a security company and they have a contract. It's that this contract is very much aimed at bringing US-style prisons to Israel and enforcing it on Palestinian political prisoners who have been the leadership of the Palestinian struggle for self-determination. But of course, it's not just the role of G4S in Palestine that's the issue. That is one of many, many issues that we're speaking about. And this is the perfect country to be mentioning it in, considering that G4S is a British company. Across the country, G4S is involved in the privatization of prisons, asylum housing, immigration detention centers, the police, welfare provision, and now they're calling into the NHS as well. And just to add insult to injury, we hear finally that they're also tax dodging on their taxes in this country. Yet, the British government continues to give them contracts, and we don't know when this will end. Recently, they lost one, but even though they are being investigated, more and more of services that should be given to the state are being given to this company, G4S, which also happens to be incompetent at delivering any of the services that it's meant to be giving. So the G4S campaign, the Stop G4S campaign, has been very strong and very vibrant. But there's one issue I want to mention that I think gets forgotten in our discussions. And here I want to send a note of solidarity to the family of Jimmy Mubenga, because to this day the family has not gotten justice for what has happened to him, and none of us should rest, and none of us should stop the campaign until G4S is held accountable for what they did to Jimmy Mubenga. But G4S is also starting this new program called Working Prisons for Working People. This is how G4S is marketing itself nowadays to big corporations, that now you can get prison labor out of this company, and of course they're paying horrible wages below minimum wage, and all of this is being integrated together. So as our services are being sold off slowly, G4S is playing a really important role. But I want to end on a happy note about how well the campaign is going. Last year, a few of us bought shares in G4S. I'm a G4S shareholder. We walked into their AGM, we asked them questions, there was a protest outside, and the next day, all of the media was about G4S's role in Palestine. There was an occupation of the G4S rooftop, which is really funny for a security company. People were able to occupy their rooftop quite easily. And I want to give another shout out to all the students in the room from King's University and from Southampton University, because they have managed to end the G4S contracts on their campuses after really hard work. So what we are hoping for out of today, and if there is anything you take out of today, I know many people were excited. I saw many people doing the I'm going to see Angela Davis dance as they walked in the room. which was all some great dancing. I haven't seen a lot of good dancing since I've come to this country. But having said that, the most important thing is for us to grow this campaign. If your university has G4S contract, come and speak to me afterwards, please. If you're working in G4S and you're unionized, if you do anything in any way, shape, or form related to G4S, let us work together, because this is a campaign we can win, and we are already starting to win it. And on a last point about Palestine, Because the BDS movement is doing really, really well, and because of these achievements, we do need all of your support. If you don't know much about BDS, today is a good night to start. There is Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions report that War on Want published outside, so please take one. I always end by saying, Israeli government officials said the Palestinians will just forget. When Israel was first created, they said, give them 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, and they will forget. I'm a 3rd-generation Palestinian refugee. I have not forgotten, and I will go home. Thank you.